The holographic display hovered in the center of the war room, casting an eerie blue glow across the faces of the gathered officers. The massive form of the Devourer flagship rotated slowly, its crystalline spires and energy conduits rendered in perfect detail by the Alliance's most advanced reconnaissance drones. On the bridge of the Sovereign Dawn, the tension was palpable, thick enough that Lieutenant Elena Voss could almost taste it metallic and sharp, like the recycled air after a hull breach. As the sole human representative on the command deck, Elena had learned to make herself heard. In the 6 years since Earth had joined the Interstellar Alliance, humans had earned a reputation for questioning everything, challenging established tactics, and proposing unconventional solutions. Elena, in particular, had become notorious for her relentless interrogation of strategy. The human who never shuts up, she'd once overheard a Tetrax navigator mutter after a particularly heated planning session. But today, as the Alliance prepared for what might be the decisive battle of the 13th Ignition Campaign, Lieutenant Voss was silent. Around her, the War Council erupted in typical fashion. General Crash, his massive Morgathian frame dwarfing the holographic console, as he jabbed a clawed finger at the display, was advocating for a direct frontal assault on the Devourer's primary energy core. The shield configuration shows clear vulnerability at these coordinates. He growled, his 4 eyes narrowing as he highlighted a section of the enemy vessel. A concentrated barrage from our Embulon cruisers, followed by a Morgathian boarding party, will disable their primary systems before they can engage their planet-killer weapon. Grand Admiral Zath, the willowy Embulon commander, whose species prided themselves on analytical precision, gestured with 3 of his 6 limbs simultaneously as he countered. Your assessment fails to account for the temporal distortion fields they deployed at the Battle of Proxima 4. Our simulations suggest a 78.3% probability that this apparent vulnerability is deliberate. Commander Trell of the Tetrax Armada nodded, the translucent membranes covering his compound eyes, flashing with agitation. I agree. The Devourer does not leave weaknesses exposed. They are consummate predators, patient and cunning. The debate continued, growing more heated as the minutes passed. Tactical data was exchanged, battle precedents, cited simulations run and discarded. Throughout it all, Elena Voss remained motionless, her dark eyes fixed on the holographic representation of the enemy fleet. Her usual stream of questions and alternative proposals was conspicuously absent. General Crash was the first to notice. The massive Morgathian paused mid-sentence, his head swiveling toward the human lieutenant. In the sudden silence, all eyes turned to follow his gaze. Lieutenant Voss, he rumbled, mandibles clicking with suspicion. You have offered no opinion on our strategy. This is unusual. Elena continued staring at the hologram, seemingly lost in thought. Lieutenant Admiral Zath prompted, his voice carrying the harmonic overtones the Embulon used to express concern. Crash's upper lip curled back, revealing rows of serrated teeth. When a human is quiet during battle planning, he said ominously, that is a warning sign we have learned not to ignore. The statement hung in the air, a reminder of the infamous Battle of Sol, when a human commander's uncharacteristic silence had preceded a brilliant flanking maneuver that had saved the Alliance from certain defeat. Humans had many flaws. They were fragile, emotional, and terribly short-lived, but their tactical instincts were respected, even by the warlike Morgathians. Finally, Elena stirred. With deliberate slowness, she stood and approached the holographic display. The other officers parted to give her access, watching as she zoomed in on the area General Crash had identified as the Devourer's weakness. This isn't a vulnerability, she said quietly. Her finger traced the outline of what appeared to be a thinning in the enemy vessel's outer hull. It's a reverse thrust trap. The war room erupted again, voices demanding explanation. Elena held up a hand, silencing them, with a gesture that had become her trademark, a simple palm-out stop that somehow carried more authority than Crash's bellowed commands. "I've been quiet," she explained, "because I didn't want to give away our advantage. The Devourer has infiltrated our communications before. I wasn't sure if they had eyes in this room, but I couldn't risk speaking until I was certain." "Explain," Crash demanded, but his tone had shifted from suspicion to interest. Elena expanded the hologram, highlighting specific conduits and energy relays within the Devourer's hull structure. "The configuration isn't random. They've designed a perfect energy sink, one that will absorb our initial barrage and then redirect that energy back at our fleet with catastrophic force." She looked around the room, meeting each officer's gaze. "If we attack as planned, we'll be annihilated." The silence that followed was profound. Finally, Admiral Zath spoke, his voice vibrating with the Inbulon equivalent of skepticism. "This is a significant claim, Lieutenant. What evidence supports your analysis?" "Human intuition," growled Crash, but there was no mockery in his tone, only a grudging respect. Elena shook her head. "Not intuition alone, pattern recognition." She input a series of commands, and the hologram shifted to display battlefield data from previous engagements. Here at Centauri Prime, here at the Rigel Expanse, and here at Proxima 4. Each time the Devourer presented an apparent weakness. Each time when that weakness was exploited, they responded with a devastating counterattack that exceeded their normal capabilities. But the configurations were different in each instance. Trell objected, his compound eyes glittering. "Yes," Elena agreed. "The bait changes, but the trap remains the same. Energy absorption followed by amplified reflection. They're getting better at hiding it, making the trap more subtle. This time they've integrated it directly into their hull structure." Admiral Zath's elongated fingers danced over his console as he ran rapid calculations. "If your analysis is correct, Lieutenant, then our planned assault would have triggered a catastrophic energy cascade. Our losses would have been significant." "Total," Elena corrected grimly. "The entire Vanguard fleet would have been destroyed." "We must verify this," Crash declared, slamming a massive fist onto the tactical table. "Delay the attack." Not everyone was convinced. Commander Trell's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation among the Tetrax. "Delay, while the Devourer advances on the Procyon system. We cannot afford caution based on one human's suspicions." "Lieutenant Voss has proven her tactical acumen before," Admiral Zath reminded him. "The Battle of Tau Ceti would have ended very differently without her insights." "And yet," hissed Sub-Commander Vex, another Tetrax, "how convenient that we must always trust these human insights without proof." Perhaps Lieutenant Voss simply fears casualties and seeks to delay the inevitable confrontation. Elena's expression hardened, but she kept her voice measured. "My homeworld was reduced to a smoldering ruin by the Devourer Fleet Subcommander. I have no interest in delay, only in victory." "Then prove your theory," Vex challenged. "If this is truly a trap, show us how it functions." General Crash raised a massive hand. "Enough. We will verify the lieutenant's concerns before proceeding." He turned to Admiral Zath. "Can your stealth scouts approach close enough for detailed scans without triggering the Devourer's defenses?" The Enbalon nodded, three of his eyes, blinking in sequence, an indication of rapidly processing calculations. The new quantum-shifted reconnaissance drones could potentially gather the necessary data. If Lieutenant Voss is correct about the energy pattern, we should be able to detect unusual radiation signatures at the molecular level. "Make it so," Crash ordered. As the officers dispersed to carry out their new assignments, Elena remained by the holographic display, studying the enemy vessel with unblinking intensity. She was vaguely aware of General Crash, moving to stand beside her, his massive bulk casting her in shadow. "You took a risk," the Morgathian rumbled. "If you are wrong, you have delayed a critical strike and potentially allowed the Devourer to strengthen their position." Elena didn't look up. "And if I'm right, I've saved thousands of lives." "Indeed." After a pause, he added, "I find your species puzzling, Lieutenant. You are physically frail, emotionally volatile, and remarkably short-lived. And yet your tactical insights often surpass those of races with millennia of warfare experience. Now she did look at him, a slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Maybe being short-lived gives us a different perspective. We can't afford centuries of caution. Crash made a sound deep in his throat that might have been amusement. Perhaps. Or perhaps it is simply that humans are unpredictable even to your enemies. With that, he turned and strode away, barking orders to his subordinates as he went. Left alone at the display, Elena allowed herself a moment of doubt. What if she was wrong? What if her pattern recognition had led her astray, and she was seeing connections where none existed? The stakes couldn't be higher. The Procyon system was home to nearly 40 billion sentient beings across 7 worlds. If the Devourer fleet reached it, the death toll would be incalculable. But she wasn't wrong. She couldn't be. The patterns were too consistent, too precise to be coincidence. The Devourer operated like a cosmic predator, setting traps and waiting for prey to blunder into them. This time, the Alliance wouldn't be that prey. 2 hours later, Admiral Zath's reconnaissance drones returned with their data. The War Council reconvened this time with an atmosphere of tense anticipation rather than heated debate. The scans are conclusive. The Embulon announced manipulating the holographic display to show complex energy matrices woven into the structure of the Devourer vessel. There are unusual ultraviolet radiation signatures, precisely where Lieutenant Voss indicated. The molecular structure of the hull at those coordinates shows abnormal energy absorption capabilities. "Is it the trap she described?" Crash demanded. Admiral Zath's upper limbs wove a complex pattern in the air, an Embulon gesture indicating strong affirmation. The evidence supports Lieutenant Voss's analysis with 94.7% certainty. The Devourer has constructed an elaborate energy sink disguised as a structural weakness. Had we attacked as planned, our weapons fire would have been absorbed, amplified, and reflected back at our fleet. The room erupted in a cacophony of voices, relief from some, disbelief from others, and rapid tactical discussions from most. Through it all, Elena remained silent, allowing the implications to sink in. General Crash silenced the room with a thunderous slam of his fist. Lieutenant Voss was correct. The attack plan must be completely reconfigured. He turned to Elena. You identified the trap. Do you also have a solution? All eyes turned to her, and Elena felt the weight of their gaze. This was the moment that would either validate or negate humanity's place in the Alliance. Earth had been devastated in the early days of the war, before the other species had intervened. Humans were latecomers to the galactic stage, still proving their worth. Her voice, when she spoke, was clear and confident. We use their trap against them, she said, approaching the holographic display. The Devourer designed this system to absorb and redirect energy on a massive scale. That requires incredibly precise calibration. She manipulated the display, highlighting specific sections of the enemy vessel. If we can disrupt that calibration even slightly, the entire system becomes unstable. And how do we accomplish this disruption? Admiral Zath inquired, his tone skeptical, but interested. Elena smiled grimly. We give them exactly what they want, but not how they expect it. She expanded the display to show the entire battlefield. The main Alliance fleet proceeds with the original attack plan, but with one crucial modification: they don't target the trap directly. Instead, they focus fire just adjacent to it, close enough to register on the Devourer's sensors, making them believe their trap is working. A feint, General Crash rumbled approvingly. Exactly. Meanwhile, a small specialized squadron approaches from a completely different vector, using the battle as cover. This squadron will deploy energy absorption countermeasures directly at the heart of the trap, disrupting its calibration and triggering a feedback loop. Such a squadron would need to be exceptionally fast and maneuverable. Commander Trell observed antennae twitching thoughtfully. And the pilots would require extraordinary reflexes to navigate through the Devourer's defensive grid. Elena nodded. That's why I'm proposing we deploy the Sirius Squadron. A murmur ran through the assembled officers. The Sirius Squadron was an elite unit, composed entirely of human pilots. Their ships, known as Wraiths, were the smallest, fastest vessels in the Alliance fleet, capable of maneuvers that would kill most other species due to G-force alone. Humans, with their unusual physiology and reckless courage, had turned these limitations into advantages. The risk to those pilots would be extreme. Admiral Zath noted, his voice carrying harmonic undertones of concern. Yes, Elena acknowledged. But this is what the Sirius Squadron trains for. High-risk precision strikes that other units can't execute. General Crash studied her for a long moment. All four of his eyes narrowed in consideration. You would send your own kind on what may be a suicide mission, Lieutenant? To save billions without hesitation. Her gaze was steady. And they wouldn't hesitate either. After a tense silence, the Morgathian nodded once. Very well. Reconfigure the battle plan as Lieutenant Voss suggests. I will command the main assault force. I request permission to accompany the Sirius Squadron, Elena said. They'll need a tactical officer who understands exactly what they're targeting. For a moment, she thought Crash would refuse. His expression was unreadable alien features, set in rigid lines. Then, to her surprise, he inclined his massive head in a gesture of respect. Granted, Lieutenant. But remember, if your analysis is incorrect, you doom not only yourself, but potentially the entire Alliance. Elena met his gaze without flinching. I understand, General. I won't fail. The preparations moved with the brutal efficiency that characterized Alliance operations. The main battle fleet adjusted its strategy, running simulations and drills for the new approach. Meanwhile, Elena briefed the Sirius Squadron in a separate command center away from the possibility of Devourer infiltration. The squadron commander, Major Darren Reeves, was a veteran of a dozen high-risk engagements. His weathered face remained impassive as Elena explained the mission parameters, but the slight narrowing of his eyes told her he understood the danger all too well. So we're flying straight into the mouth of the beast, he summarized when she finished, and hoping we can choke it from the inside. That's one way to put it, Elena agreed. The energy absorption countermeasures need to be deployed at precisely the right coordinates. Too far in any direction, and they'll either be ineffective or simply destroyed by the Devourer's defenses. Major Reeves studied the holographic representation of their target. And the timing has to be perfect. Too early, and the Devourer will detect us before their trap is activated. Too late, and the main fleet gets fried. Exactly. Elena hesitated, then added, I won't sugarcoat this, Major. This mission has a high probability of casualties. Reeves gave a short, humorless laugh. Show me one that doesn't, Lieutenant. He glanced around at his squadron, 12 men and women, the best human pilots in the Alliance. We've been flying impossible missions since Proxima 4. This is just another day at the office. One of the pilots, a young woman with a shock of red hair visible beneath her neural interface cap, leaned forward. What exactly are these countermeasures we're deploying? I'd like to know what I'm dying for. Elena activated a secondary display, showing a detailed schematic of a small, cylindrical device. These are Energy Absorption Inversion Beacons, EAIBs for short. They're designed to mimic the Devourer's own technology, but with one crucial difference: they create a cascading resonance effect that disrupts energy flow patterns. Basically, they turn the Devourer's greatest weapon into its greatest vulnerability. And we each carry one of these, another pilot asked. No, Elena corrected. Each of your ships will carry 3. Redundancy is crucial. We need at least 4 beacons to successfully trigger the cascade, but ideally, all 36. Major Reeves' expression remained neutral, but his voice carried an edge of concern. These devices haven't been field-tested, have they? Elena met his gaze. They've been extensively tested in simulations based on all available data on Devourer technology. But no, they haven't been deployed in actual combat conditions. So, we're the test pilots, Reeves concluded. Nothing new there. The red-headed pilot grinned. Hey, At least we'll go out with a bang. That's the plan, Elena agreed, allowing herself a small smile. A very, very big bang. The hours before the battle passed in a blur of final preparations. Elena joined the Sirius squadron on their carrier, the UAS Pegasus, as they made their final equipment checks and pre-flight rituals. Unlike the methodical, almost ceremonial preparation routines of the Enbulan or the aggressive battle chants of the Morgathians, human pilots, were a study in contradictions, joking and bantering one moment falling into intense focus the next. Elena observed them with a mixture of pride and concern. These were her people, reckless, innovative, defiant in the face of impossible odds. They embodied humanity's greatest strengths and most troubling weaknesses. Their lives were in her hands, based on an analysis that, despite all the supporting evidence, remained partially intuitive. Having second thoughts, Lieutenant Major Reeves appeared beside her flight suit sealed and helmet tucked under one arm. "Just hoping I'm right," Elena admitted. Reeves nodded, his expression somber. "For what it's worth, I think you are. I've faced the Devourer enough times to recognize their patterns. This trap feels consistent with their methodology." "Thank you, Major. Besides," he added with a grim smile, "if you're wrong, none of us will be around long enough to complain about it." The tactical alert sounded, signaling 20 minutes to engagement. The pilots of Sirius Squadron moved toward their ships with practiced efficiency, each performing final checks with their ground crews. Elena followed Major Reeves to his fighter, a sleek, predatory craft that seemed impossibly small for the mission it was about to undertake. "Last chance to back out, Lieutenant," he said, as he prepared to climb into the cockpit. "The command deck of the Pegasus is a lot safer than the extra seat in my Wraith." Elena checked the seals on her flight suit. "I need to be there to make real-time adjustments if necessary. Besides, I don't send people into dangers I'm not willing to face myself." Reeves nodded, a new respect in his eyes. "Very well. Welcome aboard, Wraith Leader." As they strapped in, and the canopy sealed above them, Elena felt the familiar surge of pre-battle adrenaline. The Wraith hummed to life around them, systems coming online in a carefully choreographed sequence. Through the neural interface, Major Reeves was already communicating with his squadron, his thoughts translated into tactical data by the ship's AI. "Sirius Squadron comms check," he said aloud for Elena's benefit. One by one, the pilots responded, their voices calm and professional. No jokes, now, no banter. They were entering the focused state that made human pilots legendary throughout the Alliance, a perfect fusion of instinct and training that even the Enbulan, with their superior processing capacity, couldn't quite replicate. "Remember," Elena said as the launch sequence initiated, "we need complete calm silence once we enter the engagement zone. The Devourer can't know we're coming until it's too late." "Understood," Reeves replied. "Sirius Squadron, prepare for silent running on my mark." The launch bay doors opened, revealing the vast emptiness of space beyond. In the distance, Elena could see the flashes of light that marked the beginning of the main engagement, the Alliance fleet moving into position, drawing the Devourer's attention exactly as planned. Sirius Squadron launch. The Wraith shot forward, acceleration pressing Elena back into her seat, despite the inertial dampeners. Around them, 11 other fighters emerged from the Pegasus, in perfect formation, their sleek hulls reflecting the distant battle. For a moment, they flew in tight formation, visible to any observer who might be watching. Then, on Reeves' silent command, transmitted through the neural net, they vanished, optical camouflage, engaging as they veered away from the main battle, taking a long, arcing approach that would bring them to their target from an unexpected vector. Silent running commencing in 3, 2, 1, mark. All non-essential systems powered down. The cockpit lighting dimmed to minimal levels, and the comms fell silent. Even the engines reconfigured, channeling their output through specialized baffles that rendered them nearly undetectable. The only sounds were the soft hiss of the life support system and the steady breathing of the two occupants. Through the neural interface, Elena could see the rest of the squadron, 12 ghostly outlines, moving in perfect synchronization through the void. Major Reeves piloted the Wraith with minimal physical movement, his thoughts guiding the craft more precisely than manual controls ever could. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours as they approached their target from below the ecliptic plane, a vector the Devourer hadn't defended as heavily, according to reconnaissance. Elena monitored the battle through passive sensors, watching as the Alliance fleet engaged exactly as planned, their weapons fire deliberately missing the energy trap, but coming close enough to activate the Devourer's defensive systems. 3 minutes to target, Reeves thought, came through the neural link visible as text in Elena's heads-up display. Elena checked the status of the energy absorption inversion beacons stored in the Wraith's weapons bay. All three showed green, armed and ready for deployment. Around them, the other fighters were matching their approach vector, exactly maintaining their ghostly formation, with inhuman precision. 2 minutes to target. Through the passive sensors, Elena could see the Devourer fleet responding to the Alliance attack. Massive energy signatures flared as they positioned their vessels to maximize the effectiveness of their trap, concentrating defensive fire where they expected the main thrust of the attack. 1 minute to target. The Devourer flagship loomed ahead, its crystalline structure glittering with internal energy. From this angle, Elena could see the trap more clearly than ever, conduits and relays positioned to channel incoming energy into massive storage capacitors, ready to be redirected back at the attackers with devastating force. 30 seconds. The neural link flashed with a tactical update from the main battle. The Alliance fleet was fully engaged, now pressing their attack with convincing determination. The Devourer was responding exactly as predicted, their energy trap beginning to glow with absorbed power. Target zone in sight, preparing for beacon deployment. Elena watched as the targeting systems locked onto the precise coordinates she had calculated the heart of the Devourer's energy trap. If her analysis was correct, deploying the beacons at these exact points would trigger a cascade failure throughout the system. If she was wrong, ready, now. As one, the 12 Wraiths broke their perfect formation, each arcing toward a different section of the target zone. Weapons bays opened, and the energy absorption inversion beacons launched 36 slender cylinders, accelerating toward the glowing heart of the Devourer trap. For a terrible moment, nothing happened. The beacons disappeared into the enemy vessel's energy field, seemingly swallowed without effect. Elena felt her heart sink. Had she miscalculated? Had the Devourer anticipated this countermeasure? Then, like the first tremors before an earthquake, the energy pattern within the Devourer ship began to fluctuate. Subtle at first, just the slightest disruption in the perfect crystalline structure, but growing rapidly more pronounced. "It's working," Elena breathed, forgetting the calm silence for a moment. "The cascade is initiating." Through the neural link, she could sense the grim satisfaction from Major Reeves and the rest of the squadron. Their sensors were showing the same data, the Devourer's perfect trap, transforming into its perfect doom. Serious squadron emergency withdrawal. Reeves ordered abandoning comms, silence, now that their presence was irrelevant. Maximum thrust scatter pattern Omega. The party's about to get loud. The Wraiths broke away, engines flaring to full power as they raced to escape the impending detonation. Behind them, the Devourer flagship was convulsing energy, cascading through its systems in ever-increasing waves. Secondary explosions rippled along its hull as power conduits overloaded and ruptured. "Alliance Command, this is Sirius Leader." Reeves transmitted on the open channel. "Target has been compromised. Repeat, the target has been compromised. Recommend all Alliance vessels increase distance immediately." Elena watched the sensor readings with a mixture of awe and horror as the cascade effect spread from the flagship to the surrounding Devourer vessels. The energy trap, designed to absorb and redirect massive amounts of power, was now doing exactly that, but internally feeding on itself in an ever-accelerating cycle. "It's beautiful," she whispered, as the first Devourer vessel erupted in a blinding flash of energy. And terrifying. Reeves agreed, pushing the Wraith to its structural limits as they fled the blast zone. Behind them, the Devourer flagship twisted and distorted its crystalline structure, warping as internal energies reached critical levels. For a moment, it seemed to implode, collapsing inward like a dying star. Then, in a cataclysmic release of energy, it detonated. The shockwave raced outward, catching the nearest Devourer vessels and tearing them apart. Secondary explosions cascaded through the enemy fleet as ships already affected by the energy disruption succumbed to the blast. In less than 30 seconds, the mighty Devourer Armada, the force that had terrorized the galaxy for nearly a decade, was reduced to scattered debris and dissipating energy. "Sirius Squadron report," Reeves called, as the shockwave passed harmlessly beneath them. One by one, the pilots responded. Miraculously, all 12 had survived, though several reported damage from debris and radiation. They reformed into a loose defensive formation, scanning for any surviving Devourer vessels as they made their way back toward the Alliance fleet. "Lieutenant Voss," Admiral Zath's voice came over the comm. "The Alliance owes you a debt that cannot be easily repaid. Your strategy has achieved what 3 years of conventional warfare could not." "Thank you, Admiral," Elena replied, her voice steady, despite the adrenaline still coursing through her system. "But the credit belongs to the Sirius Squadron. They executed the mission perfectly." "Indeed they did," the Embelon agreed. "And you conceived it. Together you have given us victory." As the Wraiths approached the Alliance fleet, Elena saw the massive ships arrayed in formation lights, blinking in the traditional salute of respect. Even the Morgathian dreadnoughts, normally stoic and reserved, were displaying ceremonial illumination patterns, the highest honor they could bestow on returning warriors. "I think you've made an impression," Major Reeves observed dryly. Elena smiled, fatigue finally beginning to catch up with her as the adrenaline faded. "We all did." The return to the Sovereign Dawn was a blur of debriefings, medical examinations, and congratulations. The pilots of Sirius Squadron, though, exhausted, carried themselves with quiet pride. They had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious, a narrative that resonated deeply with human psychology. Elena found herself in a private conference room, hours later, facing the highest-ranking officers of the Alliance. General Crash, his massive frame somehow managing to look both imposing and respectful, was the first to speak. "Lieutenant Voss," he rumbled, "your actions today have changed the course of this war. The destruction of the Devourer's primary fleet has created a strategic opportunity we could not have anticipated." Admiral Zath nodded, his elongated features set in what Elena had learned to recognize as an expression of profound approval. "Our intelligence suggests that the remaining Devourer forces are in disarray. Without their flagship and the leadership it contained, they are scattered and vulnerable. We have already dispatched pursuit fleets to eliminate the stragglers." Commander Trell added, his compound eyes flashing with satisfaction. "The threat to the Procyon system has been neutralized." Elena absorbed this information with a sense of stunned disbelief. They had done it. They had actually done it. The Devourer fleet, which had seemed like an unstoppable force of nature just hours ago, was now broken and fleeing. "I owe you an apology, Lieutenant." General Crash set his voice lower and more personal than she had ever heard it. "I doubted your assessment. I questioned your motives. I was incorrect." Coming from a Morgathian, especially one of Crash's rank, this admission was unprecedented. Elena inclined her head carefully, maintaining the neutral expression that Morgathian culture expected in such moments. "Thank you, General. Your willingness to consider my analysis despite your doubts saved countless lives." "Indeed," Admiral Zath interjected, his harmonic tones carrying what Elena had come to recognize as the Embulon equivalent of admiration. "This victory demonstrates the value of diverse perspectives in military strategy. The human capacity for pattern recognition, combined with your species' willingness to take calculated risks, provided insights that our traditional analytical methods might have missed. I was taught that silence before danger is cowardice. Crash rumbled, his four eyes fixed on Elena with unexpected intensity. Today, I learned that sometimes silence is a strategy, a way of preserving the element of surprise. Elena nodded. In human military history, we have a concept called operational security. The idea that even the smallest leak of information can compromise a mission. By remaining silent during the briefing, I was trying to protect the most crucial element of our counter-strategy. A lesson we would do well to incorporate into our own doctrine. Commander Trell acknowledged, antennae twitching thoughtfully. The Devourer has proven adept at infiltrating our communications. Your caution was justified. The meeting continued, shifting to discussions of next steps and strategic opportunities. Elena contributed where appropriate, but found her mind drifting to the implications of the day's events. This victory wasn't just a military triumph. It was a validation of humanity's place in the Alliance. Earth might be a devastated world, its population reduced to scattered colonies and refugee settlements. But today, humans had proven their worth beyond question. When the meeting finally concluded, Elena found herself walking the corridors of the Sovereign Dawn, alone, processing the day's events. She had just reached the observation deck, a circular chamber with transparent walls, offering a 360-degree view of space, when she heard heavy footsteps behind her. Lieutenant Voss, General Crash's distinctive rumble, identified him before she turned. "A moment of your time, if you please." Elena faced the massive Morgathian, surprised to find him alone. "Of course, General." Crash moved to stand beside her, looking out at the stars with an expression she couldn't interpret. For a long moment he was silent. "My people have a saying," he finally began. "In the silence between heartbeats, the warrior finds truth." It is meant to emphasize the importance of calm reflection in battle, a counterpoint to our more aggressive tendencies. He turned his head slightly to regard her. "Today, I believe I understood its meaning more deeply." Elena nodded, unsure how to respond to this unexpected philosophical turn. "The Alliance High Command has approved a new initiative," Crash continued. "A specialized tactical unit focused on unconventional strategies and counterintelligence operations. They are calling it the Silent Tactics Team." His mandibles clicked in what Elena recognized as the Morgathian equivalent of dry amusement. An appropriate name given its inspiration. "A new unit," Elena echoed, surprised. The Alliance bureaucracy typically moved at a glacial pace. Creating a new specialized unit usually took months, if not years, of committee meetings and strategic assessments. "Yes, and they have requested you serve as its deputy commander." Crash's four eyes studied her reaction carefully. "I will serve as overall commander, but the day-to-day operations and strategic development will be your responsibility." Elena felt her breath catch. This was unprecedented. A human barely 6 years into Alliance service being offered a command position of this significance. "I'm honored, General, but—" She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "Won't there be resistance to placing a human in such a role?" Crash made a dismissive gesture with one massive hand. "After today, even the most conservative elements of the High Command recognize your value." His voice lowered. "Besides, I specifically requested you for the position. Few would dare question my judgment in military matters." The unstated message was clear. Crash was using his considerable political capital to sponsor her promotion. It was a gesture of respect she had never expected from the traditionally xenophobic Morgathian. "In that case," Elena said, inclining her head in the formal gesture of acceptance that Morgathian culture demanded, "I would be honored to serve." "Excellent," Crash returned the gesture, a surprisingly graceful movement for a being of his size. "Report to Strategic Command at 800 hours tomorrow. We have much work to do." He turned to leave, then paused. "The Devourer may be wounded, Lieutenant Voss, but They are not defeated. The war continues. I understand, General. After Crash departed, Elena remained on the observation deck, gazing out at the endless expanse of stars. Somewhere out there, the remaining Devourer forces were regrouping, adapting to their devastating defeat. The war wasn't over. Perhaps it was only entering a new and more complex phase. But today, humanity had proven its worth. Today, a human silence had spoken volumes, changing the course of an interstellar conflict. And tomorrow, Elena Voss would begin building a team that would transform that momentary tactical advantage into a lasting strategic doctrine. She smiled faintly, remembering an old Earth saying, "The quietest person in the room is often the most dangerous." In the vast, echoing chamber of galactic warfare, humanity had been quiet for a long time, observing and learning. Now, they were ready to be heard, or in this case, not heard on their own terms. As if in response to her thoughts, a priority alert flashed across her neural interface, a message from Major Reeves. "Sirius Squadron reporting for reassignment. Word is, there's a new tactical unit being formed. We want in." Elena's smile widened. Of course they did. Humans had always been drawn to the most dangerous, most impossible missions, especially when those missions changed the rules of the game. The Silent Tactics team would need pilots like the Sirius Squadron warriors, who understood the power of the unexpected, the value of approaching problems from unconventional angles. "Request acknowledged, Major," she replied. "Report to Strategic Command 0900 hours tomorrow. I'll be expecting you." Turning from the observation window, Lieutenant Elena Voss, soon to be Deputy Commander Voss, walked with renewed purpose toward her quarters. There were preparations to make strategies to develop and a galaxy to defend. The Devourer had underestimated humanity once. They would not make that mistake again. But next time, humanity wouldn't be silent. They would roar, and the galaxy would tremble.